Welcome back to the county seat. We've been talking today about managing wildfires and a lot of topics surrounding it. It's been very healthy and robust conversation today. I appreciate all of you participating. Again, we have Darren McAvoy from USU Extension, and we have David Whittekiend, who is the new, recently on the job Forest Supervisor for the Uintah Wasatch Cache, and Commissioner Doug Heaton from Kane County. Gentlemen, again, thank you for taking the time to share your thoughts with us on this. Where do we go from here? I mean, how do, you said it's, Darren, that it was decades to fix this.
Oh yeah, it was, yeah, it's been 100 years getting into this trouble. We're probably going to take that long to get back out of it.
You don't think we can, by using our noodles, we can shorten that period of time?
It appears things are going to get hotter, things are going to get drier. I think we're going to see more and more fires. It's going to be a more common thing. We're not going to see less fire in the future. We're going to see more fire.
I have a suggestion.
Mm-hmm.
You know, our public consists of urban and rural dwellers. I think the rural people who live in the forest, I think they get it pretty good. They understand the forest economy. I don't think the urban dweller does. They've been subject to years of propaganda, and I really believe it is just that. That somehow, you know, private sector has raped and pillaged the forest and stuff like that, you know, and in some cases it probably is true. But in most cases, especially where the Forest Service had good, competent management process, the private sector both profited and blessed both the environment, I mean the environment in total. And what I guess my request would be that you urban dwellers, before you send your check to the Sierra Club or to the Southern Utah Wilderness Alliance, and you think you're doing some great good, take a little time and learn what the forest economy is all about, because it isn't necessary. It is absolutely essential to the health of the forest in the world that we live in for the Forest Service to be able to manage that forest according to good forest management practice. And for them to file a lawsuit when they have been offended by the fact that some timber sale has been put up, it is a serious detriment to their ability to manage the forest in a way that is healthy for everybody involved, including the animals. I mean, the loss of the infrastructure, the loss of the forest, the entire forest, the loss of animal, the loss of
the ecosystem, basically?
The ecosystem. Mm-hmm. That is a result of these catastrophic fires that directly result from environmental lawsuits. And it does. I mean, these fires are absolutely predictable. The loss of that infrastructure and animals, the pollution of the air through that massive amounts of pollutants that are just put up by a fire. That's all over time. It's all remedy. There is a remedy. And I guess when I said that the radical environmentalist is the worst enemy the environment has, I was deadly serious about that. Mm-hmm. And I would just ask the public, please don't contribute to the ignorance. You know, well, I know that you believe that you're doing good because you're sending money to people who profess to be protecting the environment, and the absolute opposite is true. The environment will be protected best by a Forest Service who understands, and I believe honestly that the Forest Service does understand mm-hmm. good forest management practice. They're just not allowed to practice.
Well, let me kind of modify that question, mm-hmm. David. You've got a new forest. Well, it's new to you.
Right.
You've been put in charge of it, and if you could write your dream ticket for being able to manage this forest to its maximum health, what would be your first prescription? If that's taking away all of the politics and the lawsuits and the threat of lawsuits and everything else, if you just had the ability to say, okay, this is where we would get a healthy forest, what would be your first prescription?
I think our first prescription would be using all those tools that we've talked about. It would be using mechanical harvest to take out some of that timber in those areas where we can't just light fires or let things burn. It would be thinning in those areas that don't have necessarily a lot of the large diameter material, but have a lot of smaller trees in them. In some areas it would be letting fire burn and take its natural role, or lighting prescribed fires. Of course, we've got a lot of people on the Wasatch Front, and we get a lot of smoke anyway. Adding smoke to that is difficult for us. So just letting fires burn or lighting fires is a difficult thing. it would be having the ability to address those issues. But I think it's important to involve the public. They're national forests, and it's the nation's forest, and we need to get everybody's perspective, even if we don't completely agree or they don't completely agree with what we're doing.
Well, so here's a hypothetical question for you. I understand the sanctity of wilderness areas, and I like Utah having wilderness areas. But would wilderness characteristic be better preserved if we sometimes bent the rules a little bit? And I mean, because aren't we in jeopardy of creating a huge fire load in wilderness just because we're leaving it alone completely?
You're certainly getting fuel buildups in wilderness areas. In some wilderness areas, you're able to let fire play its natural role and let them burn. I would say from the wilderness areas I've seen on the Uintah Wasatch cache that's not as big of an issue. Many of our wilderness areas are on the peaks along the Wasatch front. That's not as big a deal. Perhaps it's a bigger deal in the high Uintas, and I haven't spent a lot of time in there. But some of those high elevation systems, the spruce and the fir, some of those have a 300-year fire interval, and they're not that far out of whack. They're not really that messed up.
I see you agreeing from your perspective over there.
Yeah,
I kind of see you as a referee today. You know?
I do agree, and in a lot of cases, what I think is really important is for folks to understand that mechanical harvesting can be actually a really beautiful thing. For example, last year, part of my job, I taught a Master Naturalist class up on Wolf Creek Pass, part of the Uintah Wasatch cache, and brought this class who had been studying, different naturalism things. It was just my only day with them. I was a guest lecturer, and I brought them up onto the pass, and we sat down and had lunch in this meadow next to this beautiful forest, and I kind of said, what do you think about this forest? Does it look nice? And what do you think? And everybody thought it looked great. And I pointed out to them it was logged 2 years ago. And folks just couldn't believe it. But the Blizzard Sawmill and the family up there has been picking away with the Forest Service and working with them for the last 50 years, over 5 generations or more, picking away at the forest, just a few trees here, a few trees there, managing the spruce forest, and it's a beautiful result. Until recently, they haven't had as much timber recently to work on, and the spruce beetle is kind of moving in, and it's kind of changing the ecology up there. But overall, I think they've done a great job with the Forest Service of managing in a more healthy way. I point to that as an example of sustainability in Utah.
You guys got about a minute each to do a wrap-up. Your final comments?
I think the key is sustainability and creating forests that we think are resilient, and it's a combination of all those things. But for us, from my perspective, industry is a partner with us, and they're essential in making that happen.
Doug, your comments?
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think industry is a big part. I think fire is definitely a tool in the toolbox. I don't believe it should be the preeminent tool. I believe that fire should be used very judiciously. I live down in those forests, and during the summer, when Bryce Canyon National Park, who by the way apparently isn't under these restrictions, they burn their forest every year. And some of those communities over there around Cannonville and Henryville and Tropic, they live in a cloud of smog, unbelievable, and it's a persistent, long-term, live with it kind of thing. For people who are so concerned about air quality, to just wholesale burn a forest, or even, it makes no sense to me. I think that should be a tool, but not the preeminent tool. I think that the biomass that you're talking about, where we actually derive a benefit from it, the economics of that, the economics of the mechanical harvest, those should be the first option. And then, of course, there are areas that just doesn't work. There are areas that do need to be burned. Let's burn those areas. Let's not burn the ones that make economic viability. I don't know whether you. I'll stop so you.
Yeah.
So just one last comment. I agree with what Commissioner is saying, but at the same time, as a forester, I think fire is a critical part of our ecology, and it plays an important role. Logging doesn't do exactly the same, even though we try to log in ways that mimic those natural processes. We still need to have fire. It's part of the game.
But logging can be a lot more selective than a fire.
I agree.
you can go in and take out the trees that are undesirable. The bug tree, the disease tree, you know, the deformed tree, and the young or the old tree. You can take them out, and it's not a big deal to make the thinning process a part of the logging process. You can make that forest look as beautiful as you want it to look without the risk of having to lose the whole thing.
Well, obviously this debate will go on and on and on, but we appreciate your time and you putting your efforts into it. That's it for the county seat. We will look for you again next week. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you all for participating.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right, very good.
Thank you.